Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Jakejames Lugo and welcome to the channel. Now bear with me, I know my background sucks right now. I'm in the middle of moving at the current moment, but I still wanted to pump out some more videos for you guys to enjoy. And because it's the Halloween season right now, we're in the middle of October, or at least the start of it, I figure why not start tackling some games that get into the holiday spirit. More specifically, BioShock. Now I've played this game already a few times, but I wanted to go through it again for this review, not only to have it fresh in my mind, but to try to see if I could find any other nuanced things about it that I wanted to bring up. And I figured this was the best way to do this because many people out there, especially whether you're into first-person shooters or not, consider this game to be a classic. BioShock is a first-person shooter developed by 2K Boston, also known as Irrational Games, in 2007 for PC, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360, but it also got re-released a few times for multiple platforms over the years. A funny thing I didn't know was that the game was also partially developed by 2K in Australia, so shout out to the Australian game developer community out there. Anyway, BioShock is about an underwater city known as Rapture, a sort of old-style utopia that was the creation of a guy named Andrew Ryan. He wanted to separate himself from the rest of the world and immerse himself in what he perceived as a perfect society. But this didn't last long, and eventually the city broke down as a result of the discovery of Adam, a substance that's derived from sea slugs. Adam grants people all types of superhuman abilities when injected. Unfortunately, people became so obsessed with Adam that everything went to hell. There's a whole lot more that happens from there, but I won't spoil any of it because it's all very good. Things fast forward to 1960, right after a plane crashes, and its sole survivor makes his way to a mysterious lighthouse. This is the person named Jack, the main character that we play as. He has no recollection of anything beforehand and stumbles into an open bathysphere that takes him down into the depths of the ocean and into Rapture. This is a great setup for a plot that slowly reveals itself as you continue to play. A lot of the finer details are given through various audio logs that have a lot of backstory about what's going on. If I really had to pick one thing that makes BioShock stand out amongst any other first-person shooter game, I would have to say that it has a real great way of building up the atmosphere of Rapture and setting a tone that sticks with you throughout the experience.
Steady now. Your genetic code is being rewritten. Just hold on and everything will be fine.
I'm not even gonna front, I really like the story of BioShock. I love the way that it's handled, I love the setup for so many things. All the characters seem very interesting and intriguing as you get deeper and deeper into the story of the game as you progress through Rapture. I mean, Jack, the main character that you play as, you don't know a lot about him, but you start to pick up little things through the dialogue of other characters and other things that you tend to listen to from all the different audio files. There's a lot of stuff in here. But then also, Andrew Ryan, I think he's a great villain, and just a lot of the twists and turns involved with his story and the story of Rapture, a lot of it is really awesome in the way that it's built up, its payoffs, and some of the twists and turns that are just so expertly well done. And I mean, also some of the other characters too, Fontaine, as well as also the Big Daddy and the Little Sisters, and all the different types of like characters and the enemies that you meet along the way. All of this stuff just works together so well. And just, again, the twists and turns of this game when it comes to certain plot points, which I don't want to spoil here because everything's built up and set up so nicely, and then when the game pulls the rug underneath you, it's just such an awesome payoff. Everything, it just feels so satisfying by the time you get to like the middle towards the later section of the game when you finish. I just think it's just so well done. But going back to the design of some of the characters, specifically the Big Daddy, which was a big deal when this game came out, funny enough, right? The Big Daddy just looks freaking awesome, and paired up with the Little Sister, there's a cool juxtaposition there, but just the idea and the philosophy and like the overall purpose of the Big Daddy, I think it's just something super original for that time anyway, where a lot of games even now these days kind of refer to it, or at least bring out some inspiration from the Big Daddy, just this hulking tank thing that is super powerful and could totally mess you up, but you don't necessarily need to bother it and it won't bother you. I actually like that. I think that it's well handled in the game itself with the gameplay, which we'll get into in just a bit, but just everything about that, the way it looks so intimidating. It matches well with the environment and the setting and the tone of the game. This is just a cool character. I just think it's pretty awesome, and I totally understand why in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale they decided to include the Big Daddy with it. I think that is pretty freaking awesome. Now, besides the style of the visuals and the design of many of the characters, what about the gameplay of BioShock? BioShock? Does it actually hold up very well, or is it really worthy of all the praise that it gets from people? If I'm being totally honest with you guys, yeah, this game plays really freaking good. BioShock is a first-person shooter that feels different from a lot of other popular shooters at the time of its initial release. There's no sprinting or crazy amount of jumping you do while exploring Rapture. The game feels more grounded because of this and very similar to classic 90s FPS games. You'll find different weapons here and there as you explore Rapture that you could use against enemies called splicers. These are crazy people in Rapture who have gone mad with their obsession of Adam. These enemies are so wild and aggressive in many ways, but the most interesting ones are the ones that have access to powers called plasmids. Which brings me to the most interesting aspect of BioShock's gameplay, the plasmids themselves. Plasmids allow you to use different powers with varying effects that are super helpful all around. Some plasmids will let you shoot lightning from your hand, blow out a fire blast, push and pull objects with telekinesis, and many other cool things. But besides being an option for you to attack your enemies, they can also affect the environment in creative and very nuanced ways. Hitting a switch with electricity could open a nearby locked door or short-circuit a turret. Setting oil on fire can put everything ablaze to damage enemies or even melt ice away, as well as also pick up objects thrown at you and fling them elsewhere to open up new areas. There's more beyond that because the game has a ton of plasmids for you to find and upgrade as you progress through Rapture. You could end up feeling like a total badass by the end of the game. It's actually pretty darn cool. Using plasmids in different combinations during a fight could be a lot of fun, especially when you're using the environment to your advantage. Within Rapture, there's different objectives to complete that progress the plot, mostly going from one place to another and defeating either big enemies or groups of enemies here and there. These are straightforward and not that hard to complete, however some of them are multi-tiered and require a few steps to finish. There's a bit of an RPG flavor to this, including how you upgrade your plasmids and how you customize your loadout, but it's never too deep to the point of being overly intricate. Everything remains focused on the shooting and the exploration without compromising the atmosphere that the game builds up so well. Now, personally for me, this is the main reason why I feel like so many other people, even those that aren't really into first-person shooters, praise BioShock enough to look at it as like a classic. Everything about BioShock just feels so good to play. The way that it moves might be a little bit slower than other FPS games out there, especially some of the more popular ones. However, moving around Rapture, getting into firefights, using your plasmids, switching between your weapons and your plasmids, deciding how you want to power up your loadout and everything else, it just feels so good and it just puts you really in control and everything just works so well. It just feels very good to play. That's like the most basic, most like, clear-cut thing about it, and I feel like everybody just feels that as soon as you start playing it. Now, one other thing that's a personal highlight for me with the gameplay is when you finally get to fight a big daddy in order to get to a little sister. This is very important and one of the big highlights of the entire game in my opinion, because the big daddies are kind of really built up very well. They're these very intimidating characters that just walk around Rapture, and if you don't necessarily disturb them, you'll be totally fine. They won't disturb you unless you get like really close and just linger around for too long. However, when you actually decide to engage with them, whether you want to take them on alone or if you want to try to use the environment to your advantage, this could be a really awesome experience. Granted, these things are super powerful very early on, and you do need to kind of get through most of the game in order to kind of like deal with some of the stuff that's there. However, once you do so and you're actually really engaging with them, it's an awesome experience. Now, one other thing I do want to bring up is either harvesting or saving the little sisters once you defeat a big daddy. Once you're done with all of that and you decide what you want to do with the little sisters, you get a certain amount of Adam depending on what you do, and I think that this is very simple and straightforward, and that's all it needs to be because it just keeps things moving at a very good pace. But it's very simple to understand and very simple to adopt and like change up your playstyles if you need to through at least through the mid part of the game. And I find that to be very cool. I actually like that. Depending on what you want to do in your experience, the game is open-ended enough to at least allow you to make decisions or change things up when you want to. It doesn't feel so rigid, and I really appreciate that. Now, speaking of which, this brings me to one other thing about BioShock that I think also doesn't get enough credit. There's some extra content which is really cool, but also, there's multiple endings in this. Yeah, BioShock has multiple endings depending on what you do. It's pretty cool to see that BioShock has multiple endings to its story, a good and a bad one you get right after the final battle. I like this a lot, and it feels like it gives you an incentive to go back and replay the game to see whichever ending you didn't get on your first playthrough. The way you decide either or is related to whether you saved or harvested the little sisters in Rapture. Doing one or the other will net you an ending that you want respectively, but there's little to no in between. You're not going to get multiple tiers of a good or bad ending, unlike in other games that have a big emphasis on plot. I like this, and I find it to be simple enough to get to the point, but still be rewarding enough to give your actions enough weight throughout your time in Rapture. Once you finish the game, however, there is some extra content to explore that provides a nice accent to the experience. There's a virtual museum that showcases a lot of the cut designs and concept art that wasn't included within the game. I wish there was also a section that had all the stuff that did make it into the game, but I'm fine with getting to see all the stuff that was once considered but cut from the final product. The models of the creatures and the alternate versions of the Big Daddy are very cool. Some of these cut designs even made their way into the sequels later on. Besides that, however, you have a challenge room that gives you different scenarios to figure out using limited weapons and plasmids. They're fun for a short bit, but you don't really need to play through them if you don't want to. You really don't get anything for completing them, and they're not connected to the story whatsoever.
The way to save one life is to save the world entire. I made a place for the children here, but it is you who are their savior. Will you stop here, or will you deliver them from this terrible city at long last?
Now, I appreciate all the extra content that you get with BioShock. I think it's actually pretty good, and it's nice to include. Again, the museum is pretty dope. All the cut content in there is very cool. I still wish there was stuff from the actual game itself, but I appreciate that. And the same thing with the challenge maps. You don't have to complete them, but they're there if you want to mess around with the physics, or just see some other stuff you could probably do with the plasmids. That's totally fine. I at least appreciated that they included stuff like that in this game. Now, as far as the multiple endings are concerned, I appreciate that as well, but once I was done with the game for this review, I was totally good. I didn't need to go through the game again to get the other ending that I wanted to see. Granted, I've done that in the past before, way before playing this game for review, but once I was done with the game the first time, I was good. I didn't feel like I needed to go back and play through it again. You could just watch some of the endings, or at least the variations of the endings, on YouTube or something. Most of the game, other than that, is just pretty much the same unless you decide to play the game a little bit differently on your own accord. But as far as whether you decide to harvest or save the little sisters, nothing really much changes about the overall game itself. Nothing really changes about Rapture itself. One thing I should mention though, with the bad ending of the game, if you decide to harvest anything, or if you decide to harvest more than one little sister, the ending gets a little bit more sinister. There is some variation there. It's not a whole lot, but it's just enough to be like, okay, there's just something minorly different. Again, you don't need to play the game like multiple times in order to get and see all the variations. You're not really missing much if you decide just to go full swing with the totally bad ending or just the really, really good ending. Everything else beyond that is pretty much the same. So all in all, can I recommend that you guys check out BioShock on any one of the multiple platforms that it's been ported to? Yeah, I think this game still holds up. I think it's still fun to play. It's very intriguing, very interesting. If you want a good first-person shooter to play, or even one that's kind of horror-themed and has a lot of suspense and tension to it, you should definitely play BioShock if you haven't already. I know that many of you out there have probably already played this game, but trust me, this game still is awesome even after playing it multiple times throughout the years. It still has a lot of great things going for it. The story is very interesting and intriguing. The gameplay is very solid and very fun to play through. There's some extra content and stuff that kind of, adapts itself to multiple playthroughs if you decide to do so. This is just a well-rounded, well-put-together package of a game that I feel like if you haven't played it already, you definitely should at some point.
And you refused it. And what did you do instead? What I've come to expect of you. You saved them. You gave them the one thing that was stolen from them.
And there you go, everyone. Those are my overall thoughts about BioShock on multiple platforms. I should mention that I did play this game for this review on the PlayStation 4 as part of the BioShock collection that came out on PS Plus and stuff. I do own the game on the PlayStation 3 with the other collection that was released there, but I figured, you know what? Why not play the best, most up-to-date version of this game and actually talk about it in hindsight 2020? This game just still holds up very well. It's still very good. There's, again, a great story, great controls, a lot of good stuff that's going on with it. And I know that the sequels, a lot of people feel differently or indifferent about some of those stuff, but maybe one day we'll get to those as well. But as always, with any game that I talk about on this channel, those are just my opinions about BioShock. Let me know what you think about this game down below in the comments section. Tell me, are you a fan of the BioShock series? Do you like the sequels? Do you think this game is overhyped? What are some other games out there that might have been inspired by BioShock or very similar to them that you guys think are very good that I should check out? Let me know about that stuff down below in the comments section. Hey there everyone, thanks for watching this video. I appreciate all of your support as always. On the side here I have some game reviews and other cool videos you might like to watch. Make sure you leave me a comment down below and subscribe to the channel too. Don't forget to hit that bell icon to be in the know when I post up new videos for you to check out. I'll talk to you all again real soon. Peace out and stay epic everybody.